Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, I appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check out today's episode. And guys, today I want to talk about the reason bass fishing is changing, and nobody wants to talk about this reason. There's actually two different reasons, and they got to be talked about. We can't sweep this under the carpet. We can't deny the reality of it. We're going to talk about it and maybe offer some practical solutions on what can change to protect the future of our sport. So we're going to get into that today's episode, and definitely shoot me your comments after we get done with the video here. Also, guys, before we get started, I want to extend a big thank you, guys, everybody that's been taking time to support Intuitive Angling by going into my video descriptions and using all the links I put in there. If you're one of the viewers that have been taking advantage of that, like my Tackle Warehouse link and subscribing to the channel and booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you're really going a long way in supporting the Intuitive Angling on YouTube here. So thank you very much from me and my family. We really appreciate that. Okay, guys, let's get into this. This is going to be another one of those videos that I'm going to get a bunch of freaking nasty comments about and a bunch of misinformation comments. So we're going to get into that. There's two reasons why this sport is changing for the worse that nobody wants to talk about. Number one is fishing pressure, and number two is man-made climate change. We're going to get into both of those in the video here. So let's get into okay, before I talk about this, I want to say one thing about man-made climate change, because I get the same thing. If you're one of those viewers out there that has this canned response, I mean, anytime I talk about man-made climate change, you say it's a hoax, or you say the climate has always been changing, let me break it to you very gently. You fell for a line of bullshit that was intentionally put out there by the big fossil fuel companies, big oil companies. They have spent billions of dollars, guys, over the past, probably now it's going on 20 years, to discredit and undermine legitimate climate science. And it's been very effective, because that's part of the money that they've spent on this is they put politicians in positions of power that toe the line. It's like, if you look at politicians that vote against any type of environmental or climate legislation, you can pretty much tie all of them back, the people that vote against it, to some type of industry within the big fossil fuel industry. That's just a given. And another thing, it amazes me how many people will take the advice on climate change by some weekend TV show host with a community college degree, or some politician that, you know, with the same deals, got to maybe even not have a college degree, and they take that as gospel, yet they deny the reality of legitimate climate scientists. Man-made climate change is real. It's not a hoax. It's affecting our lives every day. It poses a big threat to the future of our planet. Yes, the climate has always been changing, but we have never seen the rapidity of the change in the CO2 levels that we have over the past 80 years with the advent of the industrial age in the United States and on the planet. And that industrial age is the product of man-made climate change. That's the ramifications you have out of it. It is real. It is here. It's not a hoax. Again, if you don't agree with that, you fell for the propaganda. Follow the science, listen to the science, and stop sticking your head in the sand. So I wanted to clarify that right off the bat. So let's talk about those two things. And you'll know what I'm talking about. When I start talking about this, you'll see it firsthand what I'm talking about. I know you guys have noticed it. Fishing pressure. First thing about that, one of the reasons bass fishing is in decline. Now, this is something that is pretty much inevitable. It's like when you've got a limited amount of water to fish, and you have a ever-expanding group of anglers to fish, and you also have, and it's not just that you have more anglers than ever that has been fishing, but you have a higher quality, higher caliber of anglers. You know, 30 years ago, yeah, there may have been a lot of bass fishermen out there, but most of them didn't even know what they were doing. They didn't know how to catch fish. They didn't know much about fishing. And now with the advent of social media and YouTube videos, there's more people fishing, and they're better than they've ever been. So this puts a tremendous amount of fishing pressure on the resources. And not only does it deplete the fisheries, but it also educates the fish. And that's one of the reasons, one of the biggest problems we have in the sport is we are in front of highly educated, very finicky, very smart fish a lot of times. And that's why bass fishing is difficult so much at times, especially on a public body of water. So that fishing pressure, it acts the same way to a fish as some type of big environmental change. In other words, everybody knows that fishing gets tougher, like after the lake floods out or after there's a bad cold front that rolls through. Fish have adapted to do the same thing with fishing pressure. It's like when they hear an increase in noise decibel levels, they hear an increase in the boat traffic, recreational and fishing boat traffic both, they shut off and they get into a negative mode. They get into a negative feeding mode with that. So that's sort of a biological adaptation and evolution of the fish as they're getting more wary, as time goes on and human presence is a little bit more active. So in terms of what you can do about this, there's not much that you can do about it. You can't and you don't want to discourage people from fishing, because fishing is such a wholesome therapeutic activity that we don't ever want to tell people they can't fish. The obvious solution to that is we got to have more places to fish. And that's why I've always been a big advocate about building more lakes and ponds around the country, having some type of government subsidies that will take dilapidated areas and build a 300 or 400 acre lake there, or just make more water available. Because anytime that you have more water available, it not only provides, a recreational benefit through, just the park-like setting or being out on the boat or fishing or whatever, provides a really stable wildlife habitat for a variety of creatures. We just got to have more lakes and ponds and stuff like that across the country. So that's a pretty easy fix. Okay, now the man-made climate change here, guys. Like I said, whether you want to choose to live in denial of reality, if you tell me that man-made climate change is a hoax, you might as well try to tell me the Earth's flat. It's on the same level, in my opinion, in terms of denial of scientific reality. So we'll just put that aside from now, but we'll talk about the reality that we have seen. There is a definite correlation between the climate change we've seen over the past 40 years and the bass behavior and the fish behavior and the movement and the health of our waterways in general. Here's the problem that you have with man-made climate change and bass fishing that a lot of people don't realize what the deal is. It's like climate change and our efforts to mitigate climate change, we don't do it for ourselves. We don't do it for the planet. We do it for ourselves as far as to ensure our own sustainability of ourselves and the creatures around us. Because when you have a climate change situation, and even if you want to live in a fantasy world and don't believe that man-made climate change has actually contributed to man, you can't deny the fact that our climate has changed. You can just look at it from weather charts over the past 100 years. Our weather patterns have changed significantly as a result of this. We have more extremes. We have a lot of people, they'll say, well, like in the wintertime, we'll say something like, well, there'll be something that goes into contradiction on climate change science, but they don't realize what's happening in the southern hemisphere. They may be having record heat over there while we're having record cold. So it's a global problem. It's not just situated for here, but here's the problem you have with that. And here's what I'm talking about, the dangers of man-made climate change to bass fishing, is that when you have a climate change in any type of environment, it affects every single part of the food chain. So let's say, for example, that, the winters are being delayed a little bit, or the patterns are off. Maybe the patterns are off 3 or 4 weeks or a month or whatever. Every single biological piece of life, whether it be algae or plankton or minnows or insects, all that type of stuff, they rely on a certain type of consistency in the climate in order to reproduce and feed and live. So when you have a climate change that affects one little piece of it, let's say it affects the biology of the plankton, or it affects the blooming of the plankton, or maybe it affects, when the insects hatch out or something like that. And then other creatures are reliant upon that consistency as far as how the smaller creatures go. Their food source is directly linked to that. And if their food source is altered, then it affects the next stage there. It affects the next bigger creature, and then on and on and on down the line. So climate change affects our entire biological ecosystem from the very smallest level all the way up. And that's when you start having a disruption in that food chain, in terms of bass fishing, that's, now we can go into other areas as far as, different aspects of it. When you're talking about specifically how it affects bass fishing, it affects bass fishing through the food chain. And it's been incremental that we've seen, that I have seen in my own fishing experience, because the weather patterns and the fishing patterns that I knew worked 40 years ago, they've changed. They're not the same. We have different weather patterns as far as the bass do, and they behave in different times of the year differently now than they did 40 years ago. They're in different places. They're in different places at different times of the year. And that's all a result of these changes in the climate within the ecosystem of the lake. So the point of the matter is, it's like eventually, and this is the big if in climate science, excuse me, when does it get to the point where it affects the sustainability and the health of the fishery? That is the big question mark. Is it going to be 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 50 years? How long does this process take before it throws the entire cycle out of balance, and then you have some type of a catastrophic, some type of a catastrophic extinction event? And that is what, if you look back at almost any extinction event we've had on this planet, I don't care, there's been 6 great extinctions, guys, on the planet so far, 5 or 6 different extinction level events throughout the history of our planet over, millions and hundreds of millions of years. Every single extinction level event that has occurred on this planet was due to climate change. Every single one of them. It's like when the asteroid hit off the Yucatan Peninsula 160 million years ago, the reason that, 95% of the life on Earth died was the climate change. That they couldn't adapt to the climate change. When there was the Great Dying, there was another extinction level event before that. It was the same thing. It was a major climate change shift. And that's what we're in right now, except that this climate change event that we're in is completely due to man's activities. The CO2 emissions that we've got 8 billion people on this planet that are pumping all types of shit into the atmosphere, cars, factories, all this type of stuff. If somebody doesn't think that doesn't have some type of an impact on our atmosphere when we're pumping millions and millions of tons of toxins and CO2 into our atmosphere, I don't know, it's such a denial of reality. I can't wrap my head around somebody that can't comprehend that. So anyway, in terms of climate change, what can you do about that? The only thing that we can do to try to mitigate this and try to reverse a little bit is we have to vote and put people in position of power that understand science and do not undermine, climate legislation, climate protection legislation. And right now, guys, we have the fox guarding the hen house. Everybody out there in positions of power are like knuckle-dragging Neanderthals that deny climate change, and they vote against climate change legislation, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So in the meantime, all of the other countries on this planet, they're moving ahead with green energy technology because they understand that's the direction it's going to. They understand the economic boom that's going to come out of it. And here in the United States, we're going to get left behind. Everybody else is going to be advanced and having green energy and making billions of dollars off of green energy technology, and we're still going to be freaking burning oil and burning coal like it was the 1800s. So anyway, guys, that's just a few thoughts on that. Sort of got off on left field a little bit. Let me know what you guys think about it. We'll check in later.